Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Dr. Gloria Bashir, and on behalf of Imam Tariq El-Amin, the resident Imam of Masjid al-Taqwa, and the Talem Committee chaired by Dr. Aisha El-Amin, and with our committee members, Dr. Lionel Allen Jr., and our today's presenter, Sister Rasheda Fitzpatrick. And we all want to welcome you to today's Talem. We will first open our Talem with Surah Al-Fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Praise be to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of the worlds, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, and thine aid we seek. Show us the straight way, the way of those on whom thou hast bestowed thy grace, those whose portion is not wrath and who go not astray. Ameen. Today's topic is it's a wonderful topic by Sister Rasheda, who is one of the Talem committee members. And she's going to be talking about ending our enslavement to the white god sugar before it ends us. And this is Black America's toxic love affair with sugar. So let me just tell you a little bit about Sister Rasheda. She is the sixth of 7 children born to Imam Ajeen Muhammad and former Clara Muhammad school teacher, Sister Jean Muhammad. Rasheda is the product of Sister Clara Muhammad schools and is a third-generation educator with over 20 years of experience in her field. Her focus is special education, and she is starting her 20th year in her current school district, where her primary role is that of a science and inclusion teacher. Sister Rasheda is proud to say that she is a wife, a mother of 4, including 2 adult children, and a set of 15-year-old twins. Phew, I'm worn out, Sister Rasheda. I'm absolutely worn out. So we're happy to have you, our committee member, my fellow committee member, being our presenter today. And we will make sure that we have plenty of time at the conclusion to allow for questions and answers. I also just ask everyone out of courtesy to please mute yourselves as we get ready to hear Sister Rasheda's presentation. Alrighty, we're so ready for you.
Thank you so very much for that introduction, Dr. Gloria. Yes, as this title says, ending our enslavement to white sugar, the white sugar god, before it ends us. I do want to preface this with saying that my primary goal in this presentation is to just wish for my brother what I wish for myself. And I had my own trials and tribulations. I have my own trials and tribulations. I'm not done. I've only just begun with releasing myself from this love affair with sugar. To start off, the making of a sugar addict. Well, this is, to be honest, my personal journey, and this entire presentation is also intended for me to be therapeutic for me, because it is not an easy relationship to end. My earliest memories of sugar, or the enticement of it, was, and I know a lot of parents did this, which was, if you don't finish all your food, you can't get any dessert. So it became like a bargaining chip. So it's what got me to eat the pinto beans or the rutabagas or whatever that was not as tasty and savory to me. If I eat that, then I get my dessert. So that was part of the start of my love affair with sugar. Going on with anytime I was at home on Saturday afternoons and I'm bored, I would see my older siblings, when my mother was out of the house, make sugar bread, which is just toasted bread with some margarine on it, and then dust it off with some sugar, and it was just the best dessert you could think of. And then going on, as I got a little bit older, there was a candy lady across the street. So we were always all you had to do is find a couple of pennies and nickels, and then there you go. You can have, your fix, so to speak. And when I got to kindergarten, my neighbor, as a treat, took me to Ice Cream City. And I was so anxious to get to that ice cream that that first lick, the ice cream, of course, hit the ground, and I was heartbroken. But that was part of my journey of how I became so enticed by sugar. It says, what does it all mean? So basically, my research has shown that under stress or when hungry, like I just mentioned, consuming sweet things goes back to both the cradle and our genes in offering comfort, according to an article by Dr. Chantella Y. Sherman, White God, Black Bodies, and Sugar Babies. So as I said, I watch my siblings enjoy sugar as a treat. I watch my father, who I love dearly, consume a lot of sugar in the form of multiple bean pies or multiple packages of cookies from the dollar store. And this is as an adult, I witnessed this. So I know that it was part of just how he got through the day. He was retired, and it's like, why can't I have this? And I watched it, and I experienced it. And then I also heard stories from my older sister, who told me that my grandfather put sugar on everything, including tomatoes. Everything you could think of, he put sugar in it, in his grits, in everything. So as the slide says, as years passed, my relationship with sugar deepened. No longer was I under the purview of my parents telling me, you can't have all that sugar. I was free to eat all the sweets I could to my heart's content. Best of all, it was a relatively inexpensive way to treat myself. As I saw many of my peers fall into all manner of therapy, retail therapy, nail therapy, purse therapy, etc., I felt like sugar was a guiltless pleasure, as I was still able to pay my bills and raise my son as a single parent. So I'm thinking I got the better end of the deal. I'm going to allow myself, and get my dopamine fix, so to speak, by doing this, as opposed to getting my hair done or getting my nails done like I saw my peers doing. And on top of that, I was able to, it's relatively cheap. Eating sugar is a very inexpensive addiction. So digging deeper, uncovering the roots of my addiction, I had to learn to see myself within the larger context of being within a society and culture, and that has a toxic relationship with sugar. Sugar is impacting all of us, but Black Americans have taken the brunt of the crisis, with Black women having almost double the prevalence of diabetes when compared with their white counterparts. Similarly, Blacks are afflicted by diabetes at a rate of 1.5 times that of the white men. Sweetness is our primary pleasure, according to Eater magazine Ruby Taldon, who writes that sugar sensations mimic the effect of warmth or softness to the mind. So due to the power of this primal pleasure, generations of Black families have used evaporated pep milk and water as baby formula. The white God, Black bodies, and sugars. They're the very crop that fueled enslavement has become the substance that, when ingested by the progeny of those toilers, destroys their bodies, according to Dr. S. Sherman. Here's a presentation I wanted to show you all.
400 years ago this month, in August 1619, the first African slaves arrived in Virginia. It's regarded by many as the beginning of America's long relationship with slavery. The 400th anniversary and the ways slavery has affected American history since then are being commemorated. One of the more notable efforts is the New York Times 1619 Project, which is spotlighting parts of history that are less well known. we are going to focus on some of the economic legacies, including the larger connections with modern capitalism. Specifically, we're going to look at how the production of American sugar, known as white gold, helped to fuel slavery and became ingrained in our society. Historian Khalil Gibran Muhammad of Harvard's Kennedy School wrote about that for the New York Times. Louisiana, he wrote, led the nation in destroying the lives of Black people in the name of economic efficiency. And he joins me now. Professor Muhammad, thank you very much for being here. Help us understand how sugar is connected to the origins of American slavery.
Sugar was the most dominant economic incentive for European colonization of the Americas. No other crop was as abundant or successful in drawing Europeans to these shores, and I mean by that North America and South America, for the purpose of cultivating sugar for a worldwide market, and particularly for Europe that had already established a taste for sugar, but would grow exponentially in terms of demand over time. There's no way to really understand the significance of the colonization of the Americas without understanding the role of sugar in it.
And how, and explain how slavery played such an important role from the very beginning.
Sure. So the origin story, of course, is that Christopher Columbus brings some cane stalks with him by way of the Spanish Canary Islands in 1493. So sugar is already part of the globe, but it has not become the commodity in bulk form that it will become once Christopher Columbus brings it to the New World. As such, sugar was always an incredibly difficult product to produce. First, the cane itself is heavy and unwieldy.
Right.
And secondly, to take the plant and turn it into sugar required incredible labor and often dangerous and difficult labor.
And you write about how, of course, that began in the 1600s, but then it went on literally for hundreds of years. It changed shape. You get closer to the Civil War, and the shape of the sugar industry has changed, but still slaves are an essential piece of it.
Absolutely. So Louisiana doesn't get into the business of sugarcane cultivation until the end of the 18th century. As a result of the attempt to cultivate sugar, it blossomed and bloomed. And by the top of the 19th century, Louisiana was producing about a quarter of the world's cane sugar supply. It was a pretty miraculous turnaround. But all of that was made possible by the enslavement of people of African descent.
And I know I'm asking you to skip over a lot of history here.
Well, the point of me sharing that with you all is if you are aware of the origins of sugar, then the goal is for you to actually take into consideration that if it has that beginning for us, why are we allowing it to why are we continuing to enslave ourselves to this very product? So the effects of sugar have been catastrophic for Black Americans. Physical effects. I'm going to talk about the physical effects as well as the mental effects. But first, sugar has been linked to obesity, diabetes, and cancer. Over the last 30 years, diabetes rates have increased by almost a third nationwide. Rates for African Americans have outpaced theirs of non-Black counterparts. Americans consume as much as 77.1 pounds of sugar and related sweeteners per person per year, according to United States Department of Agriculture data. That is nearly twice the limit the department recommends based on a 2,000 calorie diet. And one of the things that I'm noticing, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's noticed this, the growing number of kidney care centers or dialysis centers in the United States, in Illinois, and particularly in Chicago. Chicago alone has 29 dialysis centers. So it's become very profitable for this industry for us to continue on our route with the amount of sugar that we are taking. And if nothing else, we got to remind ourselves not to be blind consumers and not to feed into an industry that is designed for our destruction. They are making a profit off of our poor choices. And between understanding that it started off in slavery, so it was never intended. It started off as an abusive relationship from day one. So if you understand that we were abused because of it, and we understand that the more we continue abusing the sugar and taking it in blindly, the more we're putting money in the Vita's Kidney Care and then the like company. We're giving them our hard-earned money. The depth and the scope of the problem in 2 images. So this is the dialysis markets rate, how it has increased from 2021 and how it plans on to continue increasing over the years. So this is how much billions of dollars that we are giving to this industry because we are not practicing a balanced amount of sugar intake. We are allowing our addiction to the sugar to make us, for lack of a better word, enslaved to it. And you look at this particular image, this is all the dialysis centers around the country. You can see how the growing number of them are where they are concentrated. And as the Illinoisans are right there with them. We're not isolated from them like Nebraska or any other state. We're right in the mix of it. The effects of sugar have been catastrophic for African Americans on our mental health as well. Refined carbohydrates linked to depression. Sugar is more addictive than cocaine. Sugar is linked to inflammation, which is linked to depression. Insulin may help treat depression. Men are at greater risk for sugar effects. It's the type of carb, not the quantity, that counts. Eating commercially baked goods is linked with depression. Now, part of another reason why this is near and dear to my heart is, as an advocate of mental health care and recognizing that we as an African American community do have, we are more likely to go undiagnosed for our depression. What we have been doing is actually using sugar to what we believe help us alleviate our depression, but it's actually making us worse. It's making the depression rate increase. And this is generational. So if my grandfather was putting sugar on everything, why do you think he was putting sugar on everything? That's how he was managing his mental health. Why do we go to sugar every time as a reward? Like myself, every Friday, I feel like if I had a difficult week or even if I had a difficult day, the way to balance it out is for me to treat myself with iced coffee or some kind of pastry, because I worked hard and this is what I deserve, and I should get something for all of my trouble. It's unfortunate, but I was working against myself. And we are working against ourselves if we believe that sugar is our God-given right to be able to have, because we take on so much of the world, and this is how we should be. This is what we call it, self-medicated. We're self-medicating ourselves with sugar. And another reason why this is near and dear to me is, in the high school settings, I do see a larger number of students who you can tell they're not managing their emotions very well. You can tell, and if it's affecting our youth, then that should be even more of a motivation for us to educate them. High depression rates among high school socioeconomic Black population has grown. 15 is the average age. Out of 810 African American youth from the United States survey of America Life, 15 is the average age for respondent Respond is their average respondent age. 27.57 reported their family didn't make enough money despite objectives. High socioeconomic rating. 6.3 met criteria for lifetime major depressive disorder. 4.22 met criteria for 12-month major depression disorder. 1.49 met criteria for 30-day major depressive disorder. So if we're trying to figure out what is going on with our youth, we have to look at our cabinets. We have to look at what we're supplying our children, what we're allowing them to have. We think that we're actually giving them something of substance, but the average person, if you were to go and look in their cart, they have all sugary products. And you think, well, it's in the grocery store, so and it must be some good to them, or this is all they eat. Yeah, this is all they eat because you're just feeding into their addiction. But the more you feeding into their addiction, the more you are actually making the situation worse. Trying to figure out why won't your kid go to school, or why does your kid have such a problem with following the rules and regulations. I've witnessed it myself. They come in with the big giant cups of Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or Monster drinks, and by the 7th or 8th period, they crash, and all they want to do is go to sleep. And it's kind of like a giant pacifier that we've given our children over the years to keep them appeased, but we are really doing more harm than good. Sorry. I got this information from the connection between sugar and depression, which is an article online on Healthline. So the next bit of information I want to share with you, it comes from a post called Able To, which is a telemedicine site that provides affordable virtual therapy and coaching. This site identifies the correlation between sugar and mental health. Here are 3 ways sugar impacts mental health. Most of us know that excess calories, especially empty calories from sugar, can create extra weight on our bodies. But research shows that sugar consumption also takes a toll on our mental health. Reducing sugar intake can help prevent obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and chronic inflammation while getting you leaner. But the impact on our mental health can be just as significant, if not more. Number 1, depression. Eating sugar can cause an initial high followed by an inevitable crash, leading to intense cravings to consume more and more sugar, which perpetuates a vicious cycle that's hard to stop. This behavior can create extreme mood swings due to an overactivated reward system in the brain caused by the release of feel-good hormone, dopamine. Studies show that sugar can also increase feelings of depression and potential for schizophrenia in people low in the growth hormone called BDNF. The hormone deficiency is found in people with depression and schizophrenia, and thus consuming sugar only makes the symptoms more pronounced. Number 2, anxiety. People who suffer from anxiety typically experience worry, panic, and acute alertness. Sugar intensifies these symptoms by causing a surge of adrenaline, leading to hyperactivity and hyperreactive response to stress. Research has shown that sugar can exaggerate the fear of negative outcomes commonly associated with anxiety. Also, because eating sweets can cause fatigue, blurred vision, and fuzzy thinking, viewing situations objectively and make confident choices can be more difficult when we consume higher sugar diets. Number 3, learning and memory. This is the part that's near and dear to me as an educator. Eating sugar can contribute to the deterioration of the brain's ability to process and retain information as it causes chronic inflammation. Researchers once thought that inflammation was a factor that can cause depression. Now studies are showing that depression and stress can increase inflammation. Regardless, this inflammation has been associated with a decrease in cognitive abilities, leading to signs of aging like forgetfulness and confusion. An UCLA study in 2012 showed that insulin resistance caused by consuming a high sugar diet damages brain cells dedicated to learning and memory and rest, while foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids protect these synapses. Also, unstable blood sugar levels can create excessive insulin releasing, making the brain secrete glutamate and neurotransmitters, which send signals between nerve cells that is necessary for learning and memory. But in excess can cause agitation, depression, and anxiety. Often when we are sad, stressed, or overwhelmed, we reach for sugar as it stimulates the release of dopamine and adrenaline. Besides the pleasurable taste, the rush and the high of the sugar gives merely temporary relief, but with serious long-term mental health ramifications. That is the end of my presentation. I hope that something that I said allows us to really take into account what we are consuming and not allowing, and hopefully we're not blind, we're not walking around like blind cattle, just consuming because everyone else is doing it. And this is all that they're offering. Because I myself went to Aldi's just in search of non-sugary treats, and it didn't exist. I thought I could get it in a fruit ice cream bar. It had like 14 grams of added sugar. I thought I can get it in granola. It had like 21 grams of added sugar. The only area I was able to get something was in the fruit department. And that's a start though. But I also have to recognize that the sugar industry feeds on us having limited funds. So that's why they make it so cheap and reasonable for us. But we have to be able to understand that just like we guard what we put in our minds as far as the music we listen to, we have to guard what we put in our mouths, because the slavery has not ended as long as we continue on the route that we're going. Okay, that was the end of my presentation. I'm open for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Sister Rasheda. Very, very excellent information. I have one particular question before we open the floor up. I'm just wondering, in your research, did you come across any connection between some of the drug manufacturers and food distributors?
I did not research anything along those lines, but I would not be surprised, because like many of the things we've talked about over the years, that there's always a connection, and money is behind all of its motivation.
Absolutely. Yeah, very good presentation. Yes, we open the floor for questions and comments. I totally agree with Sister Rasheda with your commentary about sugar and making that connection with the 1619 project. So we open the floor. Any questions at all for Sister Rasheda?
Assalamu
Walaikum assalam.
Bashir Sar. I had put in the chat, do we know of any health benefits for sugar? I know we're aware that there are some harmful effects of sugar. Are there any beneficial effects? And while you were giving your presentation, I went to look at a history of sugar. And sugar's been around a long time. And to make a balance to that too, we're relating sugar to one of the harmful effects of slavery. But I would caution us to say too that sugar was eaten by white folks also. So
of course.
So not only is it harming African Americans, it's harming everyone who may be consuming sugar in the amount that it causes harm. So 2 questions. is there any beneficial uh, benefits from eating sugar? And is there a way of moderation in eating sugar where sugar wouldn't be harmful for you?
Well, my research has only shown that it initially was it increased its rate because it was replacing trans fats. The food industry said we need to reduce trans fats. And so when they reduced the trans fats, the food didn't taste too good. It tasted like cardboard. So sugar became the substitute for replacing the excessive amount of trans fat. The only benefit that, to my knowledge, like as I mentioned, what I'm trying to do is for us to go back to understanding the proper amount of sugar we're supposed to be able to consume. We are consuming twice as much. So sugar itself in moderation is not a terrible thing, because I would be remiss to say that I have zero sugar in my diet. I just had some French toast my husband made, and I did put syrup on it, but I do understand that I can't have French toast every morning, and it would not be in my best interest for me to consume syrup every day. So anything done in moderation is fine. Is when we are not paying attention to the labels. When we pick up something and we don't even realize, did we even check to see how many grams of sugar was put in this to make it taste good? And the sucrose and fructose are our number one enemies. They are a cheaper version of raw sugar. So the industry has replaced it with cheaper and cheaper versions of sugar just to get us to continue to buy the products. McDonald's, if you ever watched that movie, I forgot what it was called. Anyway, they mentioned they put sugar in the fries. They put sugar in everything to keep you addicted to it. It's designed for you to continue to come back to it over and over again and to crave it. And that's why we have to actually pay attention to the labels. Now, consuming sugar in grains or in, say, potatoes or something along that sugar stays in your body longer, and it doesn't give you the quick fix, but it's long burning in your body as far as burning calories. Including those kind of foods in your diet and replacing them with something that came from a box or something that came from that's with a lot of preservatives, because those preservatives are using sugar just so they can have a long shelf life. It's just a lot like the teachings from when Elijah Muhammad will eat to live. We're not eating to live. We're just eating to satisfy our appetites, but we're not eating to live.
The reason I brought up the issue is to keep the balance. And again, as you was giving your presentation, I went to look at the history of sugar. Sugar has a long history going all the way back to the Greeks. And the information I read was that it was even used as a medicine. And I think I could remember this too. Maybe an old Southern remedy, put a little sugar in water. You had some kind of situation in your stomach.
Okay.
So, yeah, I do understand, and I'm not in disagreement with the harmful effects of sugar and what the food industry does too. And in order to make profits, they'll give us a whole lot of, and not only sugar, other food additives that causes us a problem. My concern, though, is should we say that this sugar is just bad, or are there some beneficial uses of sugar that we should know about? I think you said in your studies and in your research, you were looking at the harmful effects of sugar, which is good, and I agree with that. Even tobacco, I came across, and we know smoking tobacco, what harm it has caused us. But I even read a hadith, and I read other information that there may be some beneficial effects in the use of tobacco, even in the municipal or a medicine area. So that's the only reason I brought up the issue.
Okay.
If I can, go ahead.
I was also doing some research to find out what does the Quran say about, addiction or just taking care of our bodies. And that's the other point. As Muslims, this body is a loan to us and we're supposed to be taking care of it. And if we know, and that was the point of the presentation, once we know better, we are required to do better. And once we know that, and I know for myself, that was my motivation for it. I experienced just this, I want to say maybe about a month ago, I had a large amount of inflammation in my body to a point where it was causing me to break out in welts. And I also found 2 lumps in my body. And so when inflammation hits home like that, when something hits home like that, it's very difficult for you to not, it was difficult for me to not want to say something about, like, I don't want anybody to go through something like that scare. I mean, I'll praise to Allah. I pray Allah that I have not felt the lumps. I still have to have some further examinations done on me, but I had to do a serious detox. I had to take quite a few supplements to remove all of the inflammation that was going on in my body. So when your body starts letting you know that this is not good for me, with the signs that it was showing me, I felt obligated to be able to say something to someone else, because I don't know if anybody else has ever had as much inflammation in their body to where their joints hurt, or as much inflammation in their body to where their skin is actually in crisis, and letting you know, like, this is too much. You've consumed too much sugar. Because I was doing it blindly, not even taking into account. I never looked at the labels. I stopped paying attention to what I was consuming. In my mind, well, I ate a salad today. Well, I drank so much water today. I had some fruit and vegetables. So why can't I balance it out by having, this dessert? Or why can't I have these 2, strawberry cream pies from McDonald's? I mean, I just don't want us to be blind to the fact that this is kind of like a hidden epidemic that's happening in the African American communities. And not, as Brother Bashir said, it's not just the African American communities. We see all shapes and sizes clearly partaking in this consumption, because the dialysis centers are not being run solely by for the service of African Americans. It's serving all people. What was your question, Kim? Kim, you had your hand up. You wanted
Hi,
to say something?
yes, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, great presentation. And also, the question in regards to whether sugar is beneficial or not. I am not an expert by any means, and I am a pink sister. So, I recognize the ramifications, that it is not solely, a problem within the Black community. However, the rates are higher in Black communities, and I understand the reasoning and rooted back to slavery and how that was an epidemic. But I wanted to say that I have a thyroid and PCOS, and my endocrinologist has told me if I want a beneficial effect or a sweetness, to use agave syrup or honey, which has a low glycemic index, which means it doesn't spike and drop your sugar. Those are alternatives to sugar, because anything like white is processed. Sugarcane is brown. Flour, if it's like buckwheat flour, that's natural. But if you're eating bleached foods as well, that is not a good thing. But the question the other brother had was a good question, because is there any benefit? The one benefit I believe, that it tricks your brain. It gives you instant gratification and it raises those dopamine levels, but then it drops you. So it's an instant fix, and then it can be damaging. But that's all I wanted to add. And I really enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sister Rasheda, again, really excellent comments and questions. But in terms of whether or not there's anything beneficial to sugar, if someone is in crisis and they're hospitalized and they receive an IV, there's often sugar in the IV.
Okay.
Okay. If someone is having a diabetic, if their blood sugar drops too low, dangerously low, they need sugar. So those are extreme cases, of course, when sugar can be beneficial, but in terms of just generally speaking, we know sugar is really bad for you.
Yeah,
but
thank
those
you for that.
that's right.
That's good to.
Just as a sidebar to the presentation, the presentation that we heard from Khalil Jabril Muhammad, he is the grandson of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, if anyone was not aware.
Wow, I did not know that. Well, and also I found it very interesting that August, and this being still the month of August, that marks the anniversary of 400 years of slavery. I thought was quite interesting that the presentation was happening right where if we don't look at where we have been, then how are we going to be able to grow?
Yes.
We have to pay attention to it's how it was introduced. If it was introduced and it was maintained on the backs of slavery, how can we actually allow ourselves to continue to be enslaved by it?
Yes.
It didn't start off in the best of manners. So how can anything good be coming from something that started off on the backs of slaves?
Yes.
We have to, in order for us to, because it's such an emotional connection, our connection to sugar is so emotional, we have to also make the connection to how harmful it is. We have to use our logic, and we have to make the connection of understanding that just because, it's an addiction, and just at the end of the day, if we don't control it, then it can rule us. It can be our white God. It can be something that we don't say it's our God, but if we're having it every day and having it with every meal, and we know the harm that it's doing to us, then we've allowed it to be our God. We've allowed it to take control over our lives, and we have to do better, myself included. I even told myself, well, this presentation, anytime I don't know how long it's gonna last. I've only been off of sugar to the extent that I was for 3 weeks now. So this is for me just as much as it is for you all, for me to remind myself, don't be a victim. Don't fall into the system.
Before you conclude, Sister Rasheda, do you have any commentary about alternatives to sugar? And I don't mean artificial sweeteners, because they're as bad as, if not worse, than sugar. But what are some alternatives for individuals?
I think the heart of anything is you have to understand. We have to get to the point where we actually do the work to understand, why am I craving this sugar? That's the real work. Because I was talking to a friend of mine. Over the years, we have used sugar to deal with our trauma. We have used sugar to deal with our hurts and our sadness. Every funeral, if you go to the afterward, there's a table full of sweets. We use sweets to celebrate the good, and we use sweets to celebrate the bad. We just use sugar to just numb us. And we have to understand that if we take the time to understand why we are craving what we are craving, that's how we end up doing the work that's necessary for us to get better. Because to say, okay, you can go out and have this and go out and have that. Anything done in excess is abuse. Anything done
Now,
in excess is abuse.
absolutely, it's all about moderation. And I would like to add that food in general has become an addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So not just sugar, but food in
Exactly.
general, that standard American diet, or what's known as the SAD diet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to do the work to understand, like yesterday was a particularly difficult day for me, as it marked 3 years of my father being brought back to Allah. And that was painful. But I had to, throughout the day, really sit with the feelings. And that's a lot of times what we don't want to do. We don't want to feel the feelings. We want to make those feelings go away. And I think that's the reason why it's such a quick fix. Well, if I had a bad day at work, or this person said this to me, or this happened, or this is going on in my life, we use it as our crutch to help us manage our emotions. And we really need to do the work of understanding our own mental health and why we are craving what we are craving, and pay attention to, when am I craving these things, and what type of situations are causing me to crave this, and just really be a conscious consumer and not just buy it because it makes us feel good.
Mm-hmm. Becoming a label reader, right?
Exactly. I mean, it takes a few minutes, but I promise you, once you pick up that box of cereal and you see how much sugar it is, you will put it down.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just are blindly putting it in the cart because this is what the kids like, this is what I like, then we have no one to blame but ourselves, because we are paying for it. No one is putting a gun to our head and telling us that we have to eat this food, but yet we're doing it by choice. We're killing ourselves by choice.
In your research, did you come across any data that has a recommended amount of grams of sugar per day?
I'm not sure if it's only supposed to be 2. I think you mentioned that we doubled the in one of the slides, it mentioned how we were consuming twice as much as we were supposed to be, based on a $2,000. No, we're just consuming twice as much. It did not give us the exact amount of how much we're supposed to be consuming. I'm sorry, it did not. But whatever we're doing, if we just take the time to read the labels before we throw it in a cart, and if we just take the time to even understand, why am I craving this, and can I just put an apple in my bag, as opposed to the fruit snacks, and and for our children, this is another concern, not just for the adults. I really want to put this out here for us to understand we are undoing our children's education. We're not even allowing them to be on solid ground if we are putting all of these things in their lunches, or allowing them to consume these type of foods before they go to school. That's why we have if you actually put this information and paired it with the growing number of special education children, reading that last piece of information about the connection between how you're able to learn and use your memory. This slide alone should be enough information or proof of why we need to pay more close attention to what we're feeding our children. Why can't my child learn? Why is my child having such a difficult time sustaining their attention? Why is my child being easily triggered or snapping off or being upset with the anxiety? Why are these things happening? It's not just us. We have to understand that if we're put in charge of our children, we have to do better for them, not just give them what they want, because under the guise of, well, I gave you something, you had something, you don't have an empty stomach. But what did you give me? What did you provide for me? And is it really going to help me in my quest to learn, and through the educational process? Are you helping the teacher out? You know what I'm saying? When the student comes in with seeing that big giant cup of for all intents and purposes, sugar, that's a setup for me. Because you just made it that much more difficult for me to be able to teach your child.
Yes, I
And
agree.
everything. And you're trying to understand why these fights breaking out, why these children acting the way that they're acting. It's not all sugar, but it's definitely playing a role in it. And we have to do better
And
if we want to have some kind of educational experience for our children.
and I think we also have to differentiate between, you know, the ultra processed, highly refined, high
Yes.
fructose corn syrup,
Yes.
preservatives, right? And all of those combined, you know, is creating a problem. In addition to the GMO foods and, you know, the bad soil. I mean, you know, it is my
There's a lot of things, yes.
Yes, it is my hope that in your continued research and, you know, being an educator, that you will be able to promote more education from the school system in terms of diet and nutrition, healthy diet and nutrition. And so that parents can be better consumers and raise their children to be better consumers, and we can all be healthier.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Inshallah. Well, thank you so very much, Sister Rasheda. Very, very informative presentation. And I really greatly appreciate you putting yourself out there and identifying your own concerns as it's impacted you with regard to diet and nutrition and sugar more specifically. So thank you. Thank you for being a good example.
I just got a text from a friend, from Kim. She just let me know 20 milligrams is what we're supposed to be consuming. No more than that. That's how much we're supposed to be consuming. So if you learn nothing,
that's per day.
That's per day, not, you know, not per meal. Not per
Yes. And it's often way higher than that per meal, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
And that 20 milligrams should not be ultra processed.
Exactly.
Yeah, it should not be ultra processed.
I want to make sure I give all the information if I can. All praise to Allah. Sister Kim, let me know. 20 milligrams is exactly what we're supposed to be striving for. No more than that per day.
There's a question in here. Is that added sugar? And that is sugar in totality, right?
Exactly.
Not added sugar is my understanding. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. She just gave me 20 milligrams and that's what she let me know. But if you just use that as your rule of thumb, then we would be so much better off if we just use that as our rule of thumb.
Yeah. And I think going back,
no added.
Pardon me?
She just texts back, yes, no added sugar.
So sugar in total.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So that means you're counting your fruits, you're counting your vegetables, because there is some sugar in vegetables that naturally occurring. Because that's the other thing. There is naturally occurring sugar in natural foods, right? But you know, we're looking primarily at what folks are consuming in this ultra processed environment that we live in.
Yes, ma'am. But at least if we start with just having it in natural foods, that would be huge. If we just start, if we could really save a lot of lives. If we say, okay, you know, you want some sugar? No, here's an apple.
Yes.
That's what.
Yes. And that apple. Yes, and that apple or that date or those grapes or that watermelon all have natural sugar and could really also really support that dopamine.
Yes, ma'am. We can talk about
No. So we have to do this again because it's so much. I mean, we can go so much deeper, right? You know,
yes, ma'am.
This amount of time doesn't allow us to go as deep as we can go to really be able to lay out some foundational kind of, you know, experiences for folk as they begin to kind of revamp how they, you know, do meal prep within their families.
Yes, ma'am. That is the key, meal prepping as opposed to just grabbing anything. Could be a major shift for us this coming school year.
Yes.
Do more meal prepping and less consuming of all those products that they put on the shelf. That would be an excellent start for parents to do that, to improve their children's chances of being successful in the classroom.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I agree. Thank you all so very much for participating. We appreciate you, Sister Rasheda, for this great presentation, and we look forward to more.